Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning. Welcome, everybody.
We have a scene behind us here that we needed a backdrop at the last minute, actually. So I went out on ChatGPT 4, DAL-E, actually, and I said, give me a picture of the world with a whole bunch of EVs in it, and created a futuristic city. And those are all supposed to be electric vehicles. So we'll let you guys pick through there and see if you can identify any of them. Someone said there's a Model S behind me and a Lucid maybe in front or by Mark. But anyway, that is our backdrop today.
I like the backdrop. It's an interesting crosswalk running between you and me. I don't think I'd want to be a pedestrian on that street.
Yeah, and futuristic. I'm not sure what the rest of the structures are. They've got like vertical lines, whether it's glass or steel. But anyway, AI does a great job of tickling our expectations of what can and can't be, and it always brings up something new and different, it seems.
Oh, it sure does.
So I've got something here I wanted to share with you. Fisker's, of course, is in the news constantly, and they're on the verge of bankruptcy, and no solution seems to be imminent, although there's some chatter and some speculation, but nothing is beginning to really move, shake and move. So this is from one of the potential Fisker owners that was buying a Ocean. And he was on Facebook, and he said, I was absolutely not going to post anymore, but this had to be said. And there's a lot of negative press, and there's a lot of attacks on individuals that are posting anything, and of course frustration. I mean, some people have lost a portion of their life savings because of the company. And anyway, he says 1 day away today to making an Ocean purchase. Great deal, amazing deal. Only one issue: with the one that I was getting, the back screen was not working, but the place that had it fixed it. Cool, right? Then I see the following day, roadside assistance is canceled. All Ocean owners were promised things that one by one are being taken off the table. Early adopters question their perks that they were promised, and roadside assistance is a promise, not a perk, along with warranties, which are now in doubt. And he asks, are warranties a perk? I don't think so.
They shouldn't be.
Right. He says, out of curiosity, right now I'm going to get on the phone and call the 844 number, the Fisker support number, just like I might be if I was in trouble with needing a tech or worse, stuck on the road. After 12 minutes of music, I get a ring, then, thank you for holding. The next Fisker representative will be with you shortly. Every 3 minutes now a ring, and when you think you'll be connected with the same message. And then every 3 minutes, currently waiting 46 minutes, and it looks like my cell phone battery will deplete before the Ocean's 12-volt battery via vampire drain. Is a 46-minute wait satisfactory? And he's got a big note with a lot of exclamation marks. He says the bottom line is they are not yet bankrupt. Services must continue, must up until that point. Zero excuse to scale back on promises, especially for those who paid a full price. If they only had enough cash for 1 month, based on terminating services one by one, are any of you satisfied with that? One of the reasons I'm posting here is I see some saying, we never used roadside assistance on any car anyway, or you should have protection outside of the manufacturer's protection. Well, I never used a manufacturer's roadside assistance, thankfully, never had to, but not having it available is significantly disturbing. Then he says, do not defend them for theft of service. Up until bankruptcy, the court proceeding determining that status you need to get every perk, every guarantee, and every warranty and service without any exception. I don't know, what do you think so far, Mark?
I think we've got to, and this guy isn't even a customer yet. That's the
Right.
thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he pulled
He's
out at the very last
he
minute.
pulled
Yeah.
out at the last minute, but what he's saying is absolutely on point. If you want to survive as a company, your customers are your lifeblood. We know from a sales perspective, it's far easier to sell to a happy customer than it is to sell to any type of stranger.
Hmm.
And that holds true in the automotive industry, just like in all other industries. So it's just like, wow.
So he goes on, he says, what does all this do? He says, it makes people that bought worry constantly and makes prospective buyers that love the ocean turn away, as I did very regretfully. At least I got disgusted before I bought. I do wish all the very best luck, but I did not have to put out this perspective to customers who need to know the risks that I was almost going to take one day away. By the way, he says, before I pressed post, I stayed on the phone 1 full hour, and guess what? I was disconnected. 1 hour wait and disconnected, which is completely unacceptable. Then he says, I can reach out to Social Security quicker, and that's saying something.
It sure is. I these types of things, these are the stories that'll kill a company. And if true, um, it just means that the end is coming very quickly for Fisker Automotive as we know it.
Now, there was an article in Inside EV, and they said a while back, a couple, 3 weeks ago or so, a bankruptcy would all but guarantee a scarcity of replacement parts for Oceans. It would likely wipe out the Los Angeles-based upstart's fledgling capacity to provide repairs. Perhaps most critically, no more Fisker would mean no more updates to the Ocean's notoriously buggy and half-baked software. What you buy is what you'll be stuck with for the long haul. So it's a sad tale. It really is. And, I understand that when companies become insolvent, there are a host of transitions that occur. The vendors immediately pull back any sort of credit. Now
Right.
everything is COD at a point in time when you're already short on money.
Right.
So these things usually unravel outside of the control of the company that is beginning to go insolvent. So I get what's going on, but there are going to be a lot of frustrated users or, vehicle owners that are going to have to somehow be made whole, and perhaps not.
Yeah, that's part of the problem with the bankruptcy is that the owners then, especially if Fisker were to go to a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is simply we're selling off the assets and we're going to be no more, those owners are truly left holding the bag. They have no recourse at that point.
Yeah. Someone pointed out on TikTok, he says, I can't get my money back that I invested in Fisker. Well, welcome to the world of investing. It's just like going into a casino and plopping money down on that craps table or in that slot machine. Because you've lost doesn't mean that you're going to be able to retrieve any of it.
Right. So Sammy Kamal has joined us as well again this week. Hi, Sammy. And he says, hello, Lucid family. Bunch of different emojis. It says, adding on, holding strong. Goonies never say die.
And it sounds like Sammy is buying dips. And we were looking at it this year, actually. The lowest point so far this year was $2.24, I think, for the stock. And that was just April 23rd.
Yeah.
So just a couple, 3 weeks ago or so. And of course, it went up over $3 just prior to earnings being released and then dipped back $2.64, I think, today or something like that.
Yeah, it was. I saw it at 272 and was still falling. It looked like people bought in anticipation of earnings.
Mm-hmm.
And then once earnings were announced, they sold.
Yeah, yeah. Smart move. You buy the dips and sell the peaks.
Yeah. And when a company this large with stock prices this low, it's an easy way to make a dollar.
Is this a segue into your Lucid earnings?
Hold on, before we go to Lucid, Yeah, a little bit of a breaking news here. The Fisker Oceans owners group.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman in there, Claudio, that posted something about an hour and a half ago, and it says Fisker Austria enters restructuring process for business continuity. I think
Continuity. Yeah.
continuity. Sorry, cut off here. So it sounds like that in Austria they're already starting to restructure. Is that like a Chapter 11(7) in Austria? I don't know how that is regulated over there.
I don't know how it's regulated over there, but I do know in the United States, bankruptcy with restructuring is a Chapter 11, and a restructuring agreement typically is a bankruptcy.
Hmm. And it's some immunity from the creditors, which can seize assets.
So is this possibly a start of a ball rolling down the hill? Could we possibly see something coming into the States?
Yeah,
I
that's
I
fair.
think it is. I think it is a start. Yeah. Yeah. So let's get to a couple comments, and then we
Sure.
can go to that Lucid stuff.
Right.
D on TikTok says, "Come on, Fisker isn't even a California-based company."
Hmm.
Well, true, but their U.S. headquarters is in California. And then Highlander, he says, very simple, AAA.
Mm-hmm. TikTok D says, "No, I invested in all EV companies. One will hit." No, that's a smart investment strategy.
That is a smart investment strategy. We've got, lest we forget, and we haven't mentioned this in a few months, there is a tremendous amount of political impetus and government mandate, not only here in the United States, but worldwide, to force people to move toward electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And that most of those mandates have not been rolled back yet. And I don't know that most of those mandates will be rolled back. And so the car companies do understand that they need to figure it out, but the environment is there. Somebody's going to hit. And if you, I've heard of this investment strategy before. You invest in the industry, and that you know that part of your investment's going to go to losers, and you know that part of your investment's going to go to winners
Mm-hmm.
if you invest in the industry. I don't think that's a bad bet at all, personally.
Yeah, good strategy. Okay.
So, well, then talking about Lucid Q1 earnings and revenue, Lucid, at the end of the day yesterday, they announced their revenue, they announced their earnings per share. We were talking about the buy up on it. Lucid had about just under $180 million in earnings. I think it was like 172.7 or something like that. And then they had a loss of about 30 cents per share, a net loss. The expected revenue for Lucid was only about 155 million, so they beat revenue estimates. The expected loss per share was 25 cents per share. They ended up at 30 cents per share loss, so they did not beat profitability projections. They actually fell short. Couple of things that came out of that I thought were really notable. First is what Peter Rawlinson just called out in the earnings call. Said, look, there's a couple of things that Lucid has that are very big advantages that nobody else has and set us apart. Number one, we have the best underlying technology in the EV space. Period. End of story. It's hard to argue that.
It is. Yeah.
There have been a lot of experts that have dove into the Lucid, have done the deconstruction of the Lucid. We talk about Sandy Munro having done that. They're not the only ones. They've got an electric motor that puts out almost the same, basically the same power as everybody else at 1/3 the weight.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a superior technology. The other thing that they mentioned, we've got the partnership with the PIF.
Right.
Nobody else has that. Lest we forget, the Public Investment Fund is part of the Saudi Arabian government, along with Aramco, that company happens to be the most profitable company in the world. They had $772 billion in net profit in the last 5 years. And they're just trying to figure out a way to where they're going to spend their money.
Right.
And they've decided that EVs is one of the bets they want to make because they want to diversify their economy.
Hmm.
And they've decided as well that Lucid is the EV that they want to follow.
Perfect fit. It's their second act.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, another notable thing I thought, even though the actual production numbers went down, Lucid only produced about 1,750 cars or so this last quarter. They sold 1,967 vehicles. That's their highest sales quarter ever. I found that they actually were almost 50% of Tesla Model S sales for the same quarter.
Really?
Tesla Model S was around $4,100 cars moved
Okay.
in the first quarter, and the Lucid Air is more of a competitor to the Model S than anything else. Peter Rawlinson has talked about the Gravity SUV. It's progressing well. They, I thought, very astutely identified their competition as the Tesla Model Y. Tesla Model Y is not necessarily going to be Lucid's biggest competition, but for them to identify that and then highlight, contrast the differences between what is really kind of a crossover in the Model Y as opposed to a true three-row SUV in the Gravity, I think is a brilliant marketing move. The Rivian R1S is much more similar to what the Gravity is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of similarities, it's potentially going to be more formidable competition.
I got something for that. I just personally, I'm for Lucid. The note, I do hold some Lucid stock, not investment advice. Them saying that the Gravity is going to compete with the Model Y, which is the best-selling vehicle in the world, and they are barely doing, a few thousand cars, seems crazy to me. I don't know that they're even going to be remotely competing with that. If we're talking about just in terms of how much it costs price-wise, they'll be competitive price-wise. But in terms of capturing the market, they don't have the infrastructure to even attempt that, in my opinion.
You're not wrong, Jesse. In business, there is a concept called choosing your competition. And when you choose to try to duel with the best that's out there, the Model Y is arguably, it's the top selling vehicle in the world right now. So it's one of, if not the best out there. You're setting yourself into a different sphere of influence, a much higher potential sphere of influence than you would if you're going to say, hey, our competition is the Rivian. Well, okay, great.
Yeah.
Rivian sold 10,000. So are you saying your expectation is to sell 5,000 Gravities? No, they're kind of setting that expectation that, no, we're going to sell hundreds of thousands of these Gravities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep, it's a bold move on their part. I hope to see it. I hope I see Gravities everywhere.
Yeah, and like you, Jesse, I do own some Lucid stock. So I don't want any of this to be construed as investment advice. But frankly, think of Tesla circa 2013 or 2014, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Doesn't Lucid remind you an awful lot of what Tesla was like back then?
It does, and if you take a look at the entry price, when I got into Tesla, for example, it was $35 a share, and now we've got Lucid at $2 and something. Less than 10% of that.
Yeah.
And again, I have to go back to the Lucid Family Day that I attended a few months ago this year. The reason I was able to go was not because I work for Lucid, but because my son does, one of my sons. And I got a first-hand visit of the AMP1 facility, the manufacturing facility, AMP1 and AMP2. And, I've been in large manufacturing facilities before. I worked for Digital Equipment for almost 10 years, and we had a 750,000 square foot facility just south of here. What I saw at Lucid was extraordinarily impressive. And it wasn't a company that was just merely in cash burn mode without any kind of activity. there was signs of activity everywhere in that plant. Robotics that were active, that were everywhere. People's lockers and flat screens showing teams, HR type of functions, team building type things. It was a very viable operation, just not seeing the volume yet. And having a product that will generate that kind of volume, something that's priced a bit better than some of the higher priced Air and Sapphire vehicles.
I honestly think that Lucid is trying to take the same route as Tesla has taken, in that they're a brand new company. They're using the Lucid Air as their prototype of learning how to build cars.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's okay that they're building 1,500 to 2,000 cars every 3 months, because they're learning how to build cars and how to scale cars. Even though you might think of 2,000 cars as scale, it's not really. You have to scale from 2,000 to 200,000. But I think they're going to get there.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said too about companies that are facing severe financial pressure. No one likes to think about the fact that corners are cut and compromises are made, but with the kind of backing that Lucid has, I think they can take a thorough, measured approach to developing the right type of product at the right time.
Right. Unlike what we were talking about with Fisker this morning, they're not going to cut off their warranty service to cut costs.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to take a reasonable look at the business, and they are. They are doing so exactly this, and they are looking to trim costs, but they're looking at what's going to give us the best bang for the buck.
Mm-hmm. They're thinking more long range rather than short term.
Absolutely, they are. Absolutely. And lest we forget, Lucid did once again talk about their Project Midsize.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty exciting. It's Project Midsize is supposed to be a smaller vehicle. I don't know if it's going to be an SUV or a sedan style vehicle that starts somewhere in the mid to upper 40,000 range. So it's meant to compete with the likes of the Tesla Model 3 and the plethora of other vehicles that are out there, both EV and non-EV, in that $40,000 to $60,000 price range.
Mm-hmm. Got a couple comments from Highlander. He says, I'm sticking with Lucid. All right.
Do that.
He also says, I last heard that Corey Steuben is still at Lucid, but who knows? Now, Corey Steuben was an integral part of Sandy Munro's organization. Actually started there as an intern and became very successful there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think end of last year or so, we suddenly got a surprise announcement that he was leaving the Munro organization and going to Lucid in some sort of engineering capacity. And he was very active in social media type activities with the Munro organization, trade shows, that type of thing. He was basically Sandy's partner. And that is all. He has kind of blended into the woodwork at this point. We have not seen or heard from him, but if anybody knows whether Corey Steuben is still with Lucid, that would be of interest, I think, to our audience and us.
I think that would be.
Seth Love says, I like Lucid, just too much for the market. Yeah, it definitely is an acquired taste.
Yeah.
And in a different league. Seth Love says, I agree, the market sales prove it, as well as the charging infrastructure.
Yeah, Seth makes a good point about the charging infrastructure, and I know we're going to talk about this later this morning too. Infrastructure is not totally there yet if you're comparing EVs to fueling stations, but it's growing so fast. It's amazing how quickly it's going.
Yeah. While we're talking about charging infrastructure, maybe we should throw in a comment about the recent Tesla layoff. Shutting down the
Firing the whole supercharging team.
Yeah. And Sandy had an interesting take on that, which may be the right answer. The infrastructure is still being built, granted, but the technology is fairly secure now. The world seems to be adopting the next standard. So the question is, why would you need hundreds of engineers and R&D people to continue to develop something that has already reached its level of completion? And if you begin to trim the engineering staff, now you have to trim the next layers, which is management. And, production people, of course, would be the people that are building out the infrastructure. But I'm not certain whether Tesla is building the equipment that go into superchargers or into their charging, infrastructure. I don't know if they're subbing that out or if they have subcontractors that are building that.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a fair question, and it really sent some shockwaves through the industry because the rumor was that all of the supercharging team was let go, and that would include the engineers, that would include the managers, that would also include the technicians that were building out and maintaining the superchargers.
Right.
I don't know. Sandy makes a good point, though. I had not heard that prior to just now. He makes a good point. The technology itself is stable,
Mm-hmm.
which in the era of electric vehicles and everything we're seeing with technology and automation, stability is something that's hard to find.
And unless there was a second generation version or an evolution of that technology, maybe into inductive coupling type charging, one could then argue, well, then this trimming may be ill-timed, and maybe it is a severe financial move. But as far as I'm aware, there is no second generation at this point. The NACS product and charging method seems to be fairly stable and accepted and adopted at this point.
It does. The fourth generation of the next charging, which is going to be the higher 350, 500 kilowatt, 800 volt type charging systems. They're just starting to get rolled out. So I'm sure there's still questions about what that rollout is going to look like now. Other than that, I just have to say, okay, I'm going to defer to the people who work there 40 hours a week, and I don't, and trust that they know what they're doing, because it doesn't make a lot of sense from the outside.
Right. There was a note here by the businessman, and the headline was, Tesla is now blaming affordable hybrid cars for stealing its EV sales. And they basically are saying Tesla attributes this declining EV sales to the popularity of hybrids, stating that inexpensive hybrid cars are drawing green car shoppers away from the electric vehicles. Major automakers like GM, they say, are shifting toward hybrids, while Tesla, solely focused on EVs, faces challenges attracting frugal and practical consumers who prefer hybrids.
We talked a little bit about this last week. I'm gonna start by saying what I did last week. Don't panic, EV sellers. Don't
Right.
panic, EV buyers. It's not going anywhere. I found and put onto our Facebook group. We have a public Facebook group for the Gruber Morning Show. And Miriam Joyer from Tech Radar had a really good article, and she actually titled it, Don't Fall for the PHEV Hype. Go battery EV or go home. I particularly liked a few of her comments on this particular topic. Battery EVs are better today than they've ever been. And plug-in hybrid EVs, which are PHEVs, they're full of compromises.
Yeah.
For example, a PHEV has less interior space because it has a transmission and a gasoline engine. It also doesn't have the maintenance savings that an electric vehicle has. You have to do the oil changes and spark plugs and stuff like that, and you lose things like one pedal driving. It also, on the performance side, doesn't have the raw performance of a battery EV because it has an underpowered electric motor and an underpowered battery that can only go 30 to 40 miles. If you really want to take advantage of a plug-in hybrid EV's electric range, then you're going to have to put a 220 volt charger into your house, just like you would with a battery EV. Otherwise, you end up with a hybrid vehicle that is heavier and has worse gas mileage than the hybrids that are not designed to be plug-in EV.
Exactly.
And they're not they're not terribly affordable, honestly.
Well, the cost, of course, of producing a hybrid um, is higher than a EV because you now have two drivetrains,
Yes.
and then the long-term maintenance, like you pointed out, you have two drivetrains to maintain. And of course, you're back to oil changes, emissions, in certain states, and trips to the gas station, belts, alternators. It just goes on and on. The other thing that I find fascinating is that the companies that are being forced to move into EVs oftentimes attempt to dip their toes into the EV space by developing a hybrid first. Ferrari is a prime example of that.
Right.
And here we have a company that for decades has extraordinarily highly developed engineering talent to build things like 12-cylinder engines that have exhaust tones that are like symphonies to anyone that appreciates cars. And now we're pushing them into a EV space where they have zero expertise. So,
Yeah.
like these hybrid, like the LaFerrari, for example, which we have some experience with, by the way, having worked on Sammy Hagar's LaFerrari. It is an engineering compromise in many ways because you're trying to squeeze that high performance 12-cylinder drivetrain into a vehicle. At the same time, you have an electric drivetrain that you're attempting to squeeze in there, and there are all kinds of service compromises. They aren't easy vehicles to work on. And what does that mean to a consumer, to an owner? Higher repair costs. It's going to take longer to get at that electric drivetrain if you have a whole bunch of plumbing that you have to remove to get there,
Right.
or vice versa. So, I think the hybrid is probably its last gasp, and soon to go away, because as someone else pointed out here, what is our opinion regarding costs of the batteries? And I think it's been pushed up, but I think I'm paraphrasing correctly here. Yeah, here we go. Agrimeteo from Instagram says, do you think it will take long to see more reliable electric cars on the market in terms of battery life and the distance they cover on a single charge? We've seen a number of charts recently that indicate that the battery reliability is going in the right direction. It's becoming more reliable. There are, the first pass, we had things like water ingress. They weren't sealing them properly. We're talking about the Model S now.
Right.
Which we see a lot of, by the way. But as the design matured and field data came back that there's water getting in the battery, the seals became much better and, to prevent any kind of water ingress. And of course, battery chemistry and technology continues to improve. And that's just a free market condition in that if you have enough demand, it drives innovation and improvement and additional vendors getting into the business. So yes, our opinion is that the battery technology is continuing to improve. The amount of storage capacity in batteries is also continuing to improve, which means higher mileage, more mileage. Instead of a 200-mile car, the Roadster, I think, was just about that at a full charge. We're now looking at 500-600 mile cars with battery time. So yes, it will all improve.
Well, we've also noticed that with, for example, Lucid's cars do already have close to 500-mile range, and that's cars are moving up toward that. 300 has kind of become the new 200. A few years back, if you had a car that had 200 miles of range, you felt really good about it. Now it's a car with 300 miles of range. Pretty soon, 300 is not going to be enough, and it'll be 400 to 500. Those cars are coming out. And we're also seeing that existing technology is improving as well. The charging algorithms, for lack of a better way of saying it, the way that the charging station manages working with the car and to charge the battery is being improved, so the battery charge times are being reduced. And that's with existing cars and existing technology. It's nothing more than a firmware update.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah. TikTok, Hugo is saying, what is your opinion about a potential refresh for the Model Y? Will they put a 100 kW battery in? Personally, I've heard nothing from Tesla regarding anything like this. Have you guys heard anything in the industry or from
I don't
Tesla?
think there's any official info.
Yeah.
I would assume they're going to do that next. I would hope. They did the Model 3 already, and now they've finally come out with the Model 3 Performance, the Highland Performance, which is really cool. It has its own new seats, new tires, a whole redesign. It's pretty cool. I hope they do that to the Model Y, because that's what I want as a Model Y, but I'm waiting for that refresh.
We saw one of those over the weekend. Jesse and I went to the Electrify Expo here in Phoenix, a fairly large EV event. And Tesla was there with a number of their vehicles. The only one missing, by the way, was a Tesla Roadster. And I saw the Cybertruck. I saw the Model X, the Model S, and the refresh Model 3. And I pulled up there as I was going to my booth, and I said, hey, guys, we've got 2 Roadsters that are going to be over at our booth. Do you want one of these here to give yourself a full family effect? And, you know, they actually thought about it for a couple of minutes and then decided they didn't have enough room. But it would have been cool to have all of the generation of their vehicles there, except for the Semi, of course.
Of course, but you know what that tells me is that there were enough people there that wanted to see it happen that they had to seriously think about it, and
Yeah.
that was cool. That was fun to hear. You know, I do think I have heard a little bit of chatter about the Model Y being refreshed, but so far it's just been chatter and rumors, and so I would not be surprised if Tesla went and put a 100 kilowatt structural battery pack into the Model Y, but it depends on whether or not it can fit the current profile of the batteries.
All right. What else do we have?
Looks like we have Highlander. It says, I was on a major Twitter/X platform pleading for the 25,000 all occur. I was told I made my point well. So I think I'd like to get a little more context on that particular one.
I was waiting for you to sort that out, but yeah, tell us what's going on, Highlander. What's the 25,000 all about?
He's talking about the $25,000 car.
Probably.
Car, okay.
And that
All
could, you know, like the Model 2 that's been rumored or things of that.
This one down here, he's also making a plea for an electric Dodge minivan.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, the return to the minivan. Oh,
You know, I don't think we're going to see niche vehicles anytime soon because at this point, they're all struggling to maintain market share with the popular cars.
yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there. What I could possibly see, because Dodge has announced their pickup truck on an electric platform, the Ram Revolution, and that pickup truck has up to 500-mile range with their big battery pack. Would it not make sense to go from there to the Dodge Durango, which is their SUV that sits on the same pickup truck platform? That I could see definitely.
I think Hugo on TikTok also makes an interesting point. He says, for hybrids, are the drivetrains usually independent of each other? So if one fails, will the other one work?
I don't think they are, actually. That's a great question, but the reason I don't think the drivetrains are independent is that if you're in say a Toyota Prius, which is just a true hybrid, not a plug-in EV hybrid, and you mash down on that gas pedal, your hybrid will jump forward because the electric motor engages instantly, but your motor will also turn on and you'll get horsepower from the gasoline motor as well. And so you're getting power from 2 power sources simultaneously into one drivetrain. Therefore, I think you only have the one drivetrain, and there's extra technology that routes the energy being produced between the EV motor and the engine.
And then I think another fair question is, how often does a drivetrain failure occur, a catastrophic one that actually shuts down a vehicle? And those are usually infrequent, so designing to that probably wouldn't make any sense.
Right. Highlander also says, we're halfway into the show. Is it commercial time, folks? I don't know. I'm going to have to depend on Aaron for that. Is it commercial time yet, Aaron?
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
You know, I just got back from Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
And I was driving around. We rented a Jeep and we toured the whole entire island. And at one point, it got really, really rainy. I mean, it was coming down like buckets. And you know what I did not have for my sunglasses? I did not have sunglass cases.
Ooh.
So I needed to pick up another one for $79.99 and use code Aaron, AARON.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I could have had a nice, cool holder for my sunglasses while I was in Puerto Rico.
And you know, these sunglass holders, that's something we haven't talked about. Because they're full grain leather, they are water resistant.
Okay.
And
Oh, nice.
You can also put leather conditioners that will effectively make these waterproof.
Interesting. All right, so it has some additional benefits as well. We got a picture I want to throw up here, Jesse. It's called Future of Supercharging. And this one just was too good to not pass up. And we'll have it up here in a second for you. And we'll have another image shortly after that.
Oh, 1 second.
So this one is titled The Future of Supercharging. And once you see it, you'll see that it's not inconceivable.
I'm waiting for the photo. I love this photo, by the way. It's
Well, I should probably plug the HDMI into my laptop.
oh well, that will be helpful. I'll give a little bit of a preview of the photo without saying too much. It was so compelling. I actually went back to Google, did an image search to try to find out what is the real source of this photo. There we go.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be cool.
You could even have a conversation with him, I suppose, you know? Or we're genderizing here. Him, her. That does look like a him, though. I mean,
That one
it's a
kind of looks
humanoid,
like
yeah.
a him. You know, I did happen to kind of notice I would that's probably more like a statue than a robot in this case.
Uh-huh.
There are no knee joints, there are no elbow joints, there are no wrist joints, there are no finger joints.
Ah, very observant. Yeah, you're right.
And so I thought about that, and I found an earlier post with this photo by on X by Smoke Away, and he talks about robotaxi hubs using the Optimus robot for autonomous charging and cleaning of their autonomous vehicles.
Very cool.
Now that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
That makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, I would think, man, that's an awful lot of money for a robot just to walk out and plug your car in.
Yeah. You know, and this isn't new to Tesla's level of innovation. Years ago, I remember they pulled a Model S up to a charging system. It was a destination charger.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a snake-like wand that came out, made its way to the charge port door, opened it, and then inserted itself.
I could see that too. I absolutely could. It's a fascinating picture.
Yeah.
Great picture.
There's another image, Jesse. Let's bring up market cap while we're doing some images here. And his HDMI plug is plugged into the laptop now, so we're going to get this image. There we go. So it looks like Tesla is at the very top, $618 billion. And that's as of April 30th, 2024.
One of the ones I was most surprised about was BYD, that it wasn't higher.
Yeah, good point. Look at that, $85 billion.
They're 85 billion. They're basically the same size as Porsche.
Uh-huh.
And what I was also a little surprised at is that General Motors and Ford are down close to the bottom of that list. They're below Honda.
Yeah.
And yet they're massive companies.
Yeah, I mean, even Ferrari ranks much higher than some of those U.S. manufacturers that used to dominate the marketplace.
Yeah, they sure did. But that's Tesla's been the largest, actually, I think, for a while though now.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the point, both on our notes here and that I saw when I looked this up. All of these other car companies are car companies.
Mm-hmm.
Tesla is a technology, stationary power, and automation company.
Mm-hmm. And a robotics company.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. One more image, Jesse, and this one is called Gremlin EV. Those of you familiar with the last century, or at least the vehicles in the last century, apparently there was a conversion done by a company called City Light that built an electric prototype in 1973
Yeah.
of the AMC Gremlin car. And, these were at the time considered controversial vehicles. They were kind of ugly, but yet they were fairly handy. It wasn't a full station wagon, but you had a hatchback, that
Yep.
you could stuff stuff into. And this particular prototype in 1973 could be charged for 25 cents per hour, which sounded sweet during an oil crisis. What was gas during the oil crisis?
Gas prices during that oil crisis went from 19 cents a gallon, 20 cents a gallon, all the way up to like 59 or 69 cents a gallon. And in some areas of the country that topped $1 a gallon.
Okay.
And that in today's dollars, $1 a gallon in the early 1970s would be about $8 a gallon right now.
Okay. All right. So this car apparently ran on 6-volt batteries, of course, connected in series. Otherwise, you'd have some massive wiring in here. And it topped out at 50 miles an hour. But it's remarkable that in 1973, something like this was attempted. And this particular picture was taken in Seattle, Washington, in 73.
I had to do some looking up. I wanted to see if I could find out anything more about this. And yes, it's City Light or Seattle City Light, the utility company, built the prototype. In fact, the inventor was named Cotton Wheatley. He was from the Midwest, from Oklahoma. Sold a few of these cars to people in the Midwest, and this is probably a picture of Cotton demonstrating the ability to charge his car in Seattle.
Interesting.
And I thought it was very fascinating.
And then it took another 20 years before GM jumped on the EV bandwagon with the EV1 around 1993, 94 or so.
It sure did. The Seattle City Light, or City Light as they were commonly known as, actually did put out a couple of other EV models, all prototypes. But they sadly kind of abandoned their whole process by the late 70s. Felt like it wasn't a viable market, I guess.
So on the Lucid Owners Club on Facebook, by the way, this one is growing pretty rapidly. There's a headline here: Lucid CEO, Pete Rawlinson, of course, says mid-size model arrives in late 2026, priced at about $48,000. So we even have a price projection on that. And that puts us 2 years out, just a little bit over. They have a car cover picture of it, so we can't see any of the details, but just judging from the height and the proportion, it does look like a smaller sedan than the Gravity.
It does, and we know so little about this. So far, what we know, in fact, is the potential for a late 2026 arrival. Peter Rawlinson talked about that a little bit. It was first mentioned at the fourth quarter earnings call. They were talking about all things Gravity, and then suddenly they just kind of slipped in. And just wait for the midsize to come out a year later after the Gravity comes out. So they've taught, and Peter Rawlinson has kind of doubled down on that now. He's talking about the sub $50,000 price. This is going to be their mass market Model 3 killer type of car. Again, identifying the leader in the industry as his competition. And so we don't know much about it. We will keep our eyes open, and audience, we want you to let us know as you hear stuff as well. And that way we'll keep on what's going on with this and watch the developments.
Islander says, I would turn the Model White into a minivan.
Yes.
One of the things that we saw at this Electrify Expo here in Phoenix was a company that usually attends these events called Legacy EV, and they brought a few of their vehicles that they have converted. There was a 1931-32 Ford Coupe chopped, that was electric.
Oh, wow.
And, it looked like a very simple conversion because by the time you remove all the plumbing and exhaust and transmission and the engine and all the things that go with it, there was, basically a chassis and then some electric drivetrain in there. Very,
It seems like it would be super, super simple to do something like that. At least as far as the room is concerned, because once you get it down to glider status, there's a lot of room to put a compact electric vehicle engine or motor in with
Mhm.
this drivetrain. I wonder if Jesse would be able to pull up off of Facebook the video that he put on of AI messing up.
oh,
In-
yeah,
In this
which one?
case, it's in
Waymo.
terms of a Waymo car. Now, the Waymo makes electric vehicles, or they take that back. They buy electric Jaguar F-Series vehicles, and then they put them on the streets. Here in Arizona, they're kind of well known.
Mhm.
They drive in the southeastern part of the city, in the Tempe and Chandler, and a little bit in Gilbert, and in the Phoenix area. They go up into downtown Phoenix.
Oh, and they're very courteous drivers, by the way.
They are very courteous
Okay,
drivers.
here you go. I'm gonna refresh it. Starts
So
over.
here you got
It's
Yep.
clearly a one-way, folks. And watch what this Waymo does.
It can't get into that turn lane or past it, so it just drives down the.
It almost seemed a little confused at that point, like it recognized that, this could be a one-way. Why am I turning into this lane?
Yeah, you got this is in Tempe. I did
Mhm.
a little bit of looking. That's the entrance to the US 60 freeway, and you've got a lot of people waiting to turn left to get on the freeway. It looked like Waymo was wanting to turn so that it could head northbound, where these guys were headed southbound,
Right.
and it got confused because it thought it had a way to go and then didn't, and so what does it do? I think it follows the bad advice from the drivers that were fed into its algorithms, and it starts driving the wrong way.
Yeah.
It looks like it just avoided an accident, just politely just went around.
It goes to show you even Waymo is actually pretty well known for their safety record here. They're courteous drivers. Like you said, people get frustrated because these cars always go the speed limit and they always slow down on the yellow and stop on red like you're supposed to.
And they tend to overcompensate. They wait much
Oh.
longer than they need to pull out into the lane and
Oh,
make
yes.
sure that there's no traffic. And a very conservative driver.
Okay, so real quick, we gotta just pull up the Rivian, and then we gotta end the show because we gotta
Okay.
go.
Okay.
So I wanted to show because I put it in the title.
Is this our Rivian off-roading that you?
Yep.
Yeah, we've got it. Wow, what a picture of that!
Look at that.
It's not up yet, Jess. There he goes.
There we go. I wonder where this is at. But he's not quite the right side up.
Maybe the picture's upside down.
One has to wonder how he got in that predicament. Did they try to go to the right there and the grade was too steep and it eventually just flipped? They have a very low center of gravity, so this is really surprising.
It is, and to me, it's just as surprising that you look at this. Looks like a mountainside.
Hmm.
How did that thing roll to the edge of the road and not just continue rolling on down the hill at that point?
Yeah.
With that center of gravity so high right now.
Yep. All right, so we do need to end the show for the next
So,
one.
yeah, those of you interested, Google this, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more detail emerging. Our next show is the Tesla Roadster show, and we've got a number of things to cover there. It's 11 o'clock. If you are interested, go to our YouTube channel, and it'll be a second version of a podcast. And as always, we enjoy you joining us Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. We will see you next week.
Take care.